December is not just another month. It's a psychological doorway, a moment when something old inside of you begins to shift. If you're hearing this now, it isn't by accident. Rather, it's because something within you has reached a point where it can no longer stay buried. The psyche never moves randomly. It waits until the inner ground softens enough for a hidden truth to rise. And December is the month when that softening happens. Nothing here promises an outer miracle. This is an inner one, a quiet rupture, a stirring that has been waiting for the right moment to surface. That is why this message found you now and not before. The psyche only calls you forward when you have matured past a point of turning back. December, with its darkness and strange clarity, is the time when the unseen becomes visible. You stand before something that wants to be born. Ignore it now, and it won't return in this form. Jung understood December not as a cultural symbol, but as a psychological descent. It is the time when the outside world grows darker and darker, so that the inside world can grow louder. Old layers of life start dissolving, while the new direction gathers strength, preparing quietly. That which people herald as a miracle often appears at this time, not because of good luck, but because of alignment. The alignment of your readiness with what your psyche has been preparing behind the scenes. A miracle, in Jung's terminology, is simply that moment when the unconscious brings forward something you are finally strong enough to hold. Which is why you must pay attention to the shifts happening within you now. The sign isn't outside. It is the sudden clarity, the subtle sense of an ending, the feeling that something is closing and opening at once. December reorganizes the psyche, dissolving what cannot continue and revealing what must. A miracle is truth arriving before resistance rebuilds itself. December isn't just the end of a year. It is the completion of chapters that your psyche decided on long before your conscious mind admitted them. And the real miracle begins when something you thought you needed begins quietly falling away. The psyche always finishes endings in silence, by withdrawing energy from what no longer fits, loosening attachments, and letting an outdated identity collapse under its own weight. You may feel confused, but it's actually completion, the kind that comes without noise or drama. The inner message says, this part of your life is done. December brings unresolved stories to the surface. You may suddenly feel finished with a situation you once tolerated, or detached from something you used to cling to. This is not random. It means the unconscious has already moved on, waiting for your conscious self to catch up. The ego hates endings and sees them as loss or failure, but the psyche sees them as openings. It knows that holding on to expired things damages your inner structure. So in December, it stops negotiating with what drains you. The miracle begins through subtraction, clearing psychological space cluttered by old fears and worn-out identities. Miracles do not enter crowded rooms. They arrive when space is made. That is why December feels heavy for some people and freeing for others. It depends on whether you cling to what is ending or if you accept that the ending already happened. The psyche has already decided what cannot follow you forward. A December miracle begins the moment you stop resisting this truth. December marks the border between who you were and who you are becoming. Borders activate deep psychological layers. As the year closes, the unconscious accelerates a process that has been unfolding quietly for months or even years. The pressure of your future self pushing on your present self. Jung taught that we're not just shaped by the past, but pulled forward by a potential version of ourselves. And in December, that pull becomes unmistakable. It starts with restlessness, this feeling that the familiar no longer fits, an ache for something unnamed. You may feel misaligned in places that once felt right. This isn't dissatisfaction, It's growth pressure. It is the psyche signaling that your path is shifting. This pressure is where the miracle begins. It is as if a door inside opens or a faint path in the dark suddenly appears, illuminated not by logic but by recognition. Something deeper down starts glowing dimly, enough that you just can't ignore its presence anymore. The ego will resist, idealizing the past, holding on to the known, and naming your discomfort a problem. But the deeper self knows that stagnation is more dangerous than change. When the emerging self becomes louder than the identity you've been living, transformation becomes unavoidable. And in December, that inner voice gains power. The real miracle is not something arriving from outside. It is simply the realization that your emerging self will no longer wait. A December miracle doesn't come wrapped in comfort. It comes as a truth you are finally strong enough to face. All year, fragments of this truth hovered at the edges of your awareness, waiting for your readiness. In December, illusions weaken, distractions fade. The truth steps forward, not with panic, but with precision. A calm clarity cuts through the noise. An old wound speaks calmly. A sentence rises inside you with certainty. And this truth is the miracle, for it releases the energy that avoidance has bound up. It reveals out of the darkness a mirror, not of who you were, but who you've become. It's the snow melting enough to expose the path beneath. The ego trembles because truth requires action, but the psyche never releases a truth unless its withholding would cause more harm. Healing is not removing pain, it is removing illusion. December brings a truth that aligns you with reality, and when you see it, it will not retreat. You have reached a moment of psychological alignment, a rare constellation of strength, clarity, and readiness. These cannot be forced. They appear only when your inner work reaches critical mass. You are standing in such a moment now. Readiness is subtle. It feels like fear softening, numbness lifting, quiet courage gathering. December's miracle represents that meeting point between what your psyche is wanting for you, what you are now capable of doing, and what you refuse to tolerate any longer. When these line up, transformation becomes inevitable. You may feel small shifts, an inner yes where there once was doubt, a refusal to shrink, a calm replacing chaos. These are signs of alignment. Imagine branches parting in a winter forest, the path clearing, the weight of old snow falling away. Imagine a frozen lock finally loosening. Imagine dawn revealing what darkness hid. But readiness is a fragile thing. If neglected, the ego rebuilds its walls and closes the window. That's why the psyche moves now. The December miracle is not pressure, it is invitation. A gateway into the life you have longed for, but were not yet ready to claim. The only requirement is this: do not look away from the opening. And now the message turns inward. Notice what shifted as you listened. Not the dramatic emotions, but the subtle expansion in your chest, the recognition that felt strangely familiar. Fear tightens, truth expands. Let the expansion guide you toward one simple action: naming an ending, admitting a desire, taking a small step toward what calls you. Because you have finally grown strong enough to receive it, the miracle is already forming within you. December opened a door. Your job is not to turn away. You stand at the threshold. This message reached you now because something inside you has completed its long preparation. December is not fate, it's timing, the perfect moment when your inner conditions align. Miracles rise when you become ready for a truth you can finally carry. Trust what moved inside you. The psyche will continue guiding you, but what you choose now shapes everything that follows. This is where the inner world finally speaks.